Greetings. My name is Monique Alcantara. Welcome to the fiscal year 24 CSBG Annual Report webinar series, Collecting Individual and Family Characteristics, Module 4. Welcome everyone, and good morning or good afternoon, depending on your time zone. Again, my name is Monique Alcantara, and I am the Management Analyst on the Policy, Data, and Evaluation team. Thank you for being here with us today, and I would like to extend our welcome from our leadership team in the Office of Community Services. This webinar is part of the fiscal year 24 CSBG annual reporting webinar series. We hope this webinar will help you with successful and timely completion of the fiscal year 2024 CSBG annual report, data from which will be used to tell the CSBG story and the impact that your work is making. Next slide. Today's webinar is delivered to you in collaboration with the National Association for State Community Services Programs, or NASCAS. My co-presenter, Tiffany Jarvis, is the research director at NASCAS. Today's webinar is intended for CSBG eligible entities completing Individual and Family Characteristics Module 4, the fourth module of the CSBG annual report, and for state lead agencies that will be reviewing the data prior to submission to OCS. Agenda for today includes review of reporting requirements, review of Module 4 and the sections in Module 4, items to remember when completing Module 4, and some reminders and useful resources. Finally, we will conclude our webinar with the Q&A portion. As a reminder, please use the Q&A pod at the bottom of the screen for your questions. We will address each question at the end of the webinar. We will now review reporting requirements for the fiscal year 24 CSBG annual report. The annual report is a requirement born out of statutory authority, specifically the CSBG Act. Among other things, grant recipients should be submitting their reports annually where they captured measured performance of the eligible entities, accounting of funds spent on administrative costs by eligible entities, direct service delivery, and number and characteristics of participants served. In the slide up front of you, this is the reporting process. Each state either uses a smart form or the state database to collect this data, and then they export the data to an XML. The XML is then uploaded into OLDC and then submitted to OCS, after which we'll start the annual report review, finalize the data, and then we'll use the data to tell the story through the OCS annual report, the CSBG report to Congress, and the CSBG performance management website. During our webinars, we often use the phrase a complete submission. So you may be wondering, what is a complete submission? Note that information presented here applies to Module 4. CSBG eligible entities submit their data to the CSBG lead agency for the review. Once states and territories complete their review, they upload XMLs to the online data collection known as OLDC. Complete submission entails successful submission of all XMLs for all reporting eligible entities. The rule of thumb, if the entity is reported in the state plan, it must be reflected in the annual report. Additionally, if the entity received and expended any funding between October 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2024, they must submit a report. We understand that there could be changes such as a de-designation or voluntary relinquishment after October 1st, but the entity should still report if it received and expended funds. We understand that the XML sometimes can fail in OLDC, so please check the status of each XML submission in OLDC to ensure that everything uploaded correctly. If you experience any issues, please email your data and evaluation specialist and they will be able to assist you. If there are any comments clarifying your data, please attach the comment template in OLDC. Use your best judgment when it comes to a comment template. Comment on items that you anticipate to appear on the review memo or you think are important for us to know. Your data and evaluation specialist will share all resources with you, including the comment template. After all XMLs are successfully uploaded and you've attached the comment template if you used one, do not forget to submit the state level form. Our ability to release review memos and move forward with data mitigation, closeout, and further national reporting depends on the timely and complete submission of the fiscal year 24 CSBG annual report. The fiscal year 24 CSBG annual report is due on March 31st, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time in Grant Solutions. In prior years, the annual report also included reports for CARES and/or disaster funding. These are no longer included since CARES and disaster supplements have been expended. Please also note that fiscal year 24 CSBG annual report does not include the proposed changes of annual report 3.0. I will now pass it to Tiffany Jarvis to walk us through Module 4.
Thank you, Monique. Welcome, everybody, and I'm glad you were able to join us. We want to focus today on Module 4 discussion on some common issues that we see during the annual review process. The primary issues that we see are around auto calculations and data subsets, but we also do see a couple of validations regarding the connections between Module 4, Section A and Section B, as well as Module 2 and Module 4 connections. So we hope that this will help you in preparing your data for submission to OCS. One thing that I do want to point out that one of the comments or validations that we are not going to probably focus on today, and that's year-to-year checks. And that's because we rarely will put those in the review memo. They do require something very significant, such as going from 2,000 to 5 million between the 2 years before it'll be called out. So just wanted to let you guys know that we're going to focus less on those year-to-year checks and more on the other checks that we're going to talk about today. So as you see in Module 4, there are there's 3 sections, and those are Section A, which is the performance indicators, B, which is services, and C are the all characteristics report. So in order to have a complete submission, it really requires all 3 sections to be completed with data. If there isn't data in one of the sections, then it is important to have a comment explaining why there is no data in that section. Next slide, please. Now, under Module 4, both Sections A and B, there are domains, and you see 6 on the screen. Additionally, there is one that's not seen, and that is services or outcomes that cross multiple domains. It's important to understand that these domains play a big role in the connections that we're going to be talking about later. Next slide, please. So now let's take a look at Section A, and this is where the agency is reporting its outcomes. In other words, the so what of the services that have been provided. Next slide, please. So for each indicator the agency is reporting on, there are 5 things that are needed. In column 1, this is where you're reporting the individuals who are actively working on the outcome. For example, you have 200 kids enrolled in the agency's Head Start program and are working on obtaining skills for school readiness, then you would report 200 under column 1. Column 2 is how many individuals the agency thinks will obtain the outcome. This number is usually set during the planning phase. For example, the agency decided that 150 children would obtain skills for school readiness because of its services. If that's the case, then the agency would put 150 in column 2. Column 3 is the number of individuals that achieve the achieve the outcome. Now, if you think about column 3, let's say 159 children achieved the outcome of obtaining skills for school readiness. In this example, that's what the number would be added to column 3, 159. So if you think about these 3 columns together, column 1 is the number working on, column 2 is the number expected to achieve, and column 3 is the number that actually achieved. Columns 4 and 5 use the information that you put in columns 1 through 3 to obtain percentages. And if you're using smart forms, they should auto-calculate. If you're not using smart forms, you're using a state system, they still may auto-calculate. But they do use the data from 1 through 3. Next slide, please. So we're going to go through a couple of validations that are very important when you're completing the MPIs. The first one that we're going to look at is that a target should be set for the indicators being reported on. Yes, there are exceptions when there will not be a target, and that's why it's a warning, not an error. But if there is a pattern of no target set throughout the entire MPIs, AKA nothing is being reported under column 2 throughout all of the domains, then it will probably be flagged on your review memo. The other area that we're looking at is column 3, and there are two common validation flags. One is an error and one is a warning. So just quickly, an error is when something is wrong and you should correct it, hopefully before submission, or you're going to be asked to correct it after submission during the review process. The other one is a warning. A warning's not saying that something's wrong. It's just simply asking you to take a second look. So let's start with the error. If column 3, which is the number achieved, is larger than column 1, which is the number that are working on it, that would be incorrect, because you're basically saying that there are more people achieving the outcome than we're actually working on it. So it's important that column 3, the logic is column 3 cannot exceed column 1. The warning flag is around the expectation that column 3 will be smaller than column 1. So the logic is it cannot exceed, but most likely it's going to be less than column 1. And that's because not everyone assisted will be successful or have in achieving the outcome or have achieved the outcome before the end of the reporting period. So let's just give a quick example. For example, a customer applies for weatherization assistance and has an energy audit performed. The customer would be captured under column 1 because services were provided, the energy audit. Well, let's say that during that energy audit, there was a condition in the house that required the agency to defer the house. In other words, weatherization assistance really could not be provided and finished. Because of this, the customer would not be reported under column 3. So when we do see the pattern of column 1 and column 3 equaling each other, it will be flagged as a warning, because another way to look at it is that you're saying everybody that has been working on the outcome actually achieved it. And that's usually not the case for most indicators. If you think about column 1, you can also think about it in this way. It's an aggregated sum of those that have been working on the outcome and achieved it, those that worked on and have not achieved the outcome yet, and those that worked on the outcome but were not able to achieve it. Whereas column 3, on the other hand, is just those that were working on it and achieved it by the end of the reporting period. Next slide, please. So we're just going to take a moment for a knowledge check. In the chat, please indicate if this statement is true or false. The number of participants achieving actual results, column 3, can be larger than the number of participants served in column 1. Watching chat. We've got a lot of gold stars out there. That is correct. The answer is false. Column 3 can equal column 1, but column 3 cannot exceed. And column 3 often is smaller than column 1. So that's the logic there. So the next slide, please. Now we're going to be continuing with the MPIs. We're going to be looking at some of the auto calculation validation issues that we see. So remember, with the smart forms, you really shouldn't be receiving these errors if they are open correctly. We have another webinar that we're going to be talking about smart forms. So please attend that if you do use the smart forms. But if you're using a state system to generate the submission XML, you may or may not receive these validation errors. It just depends on how your system is set up. But if your system is not set up to obtain the percentages needed, then you will need to perform the calculations yourself. Now, remember from the previous slide, we talked about column 4 is comparing the number served to the number achieved. Besides making sure that the percentage is correct, which is where the error validation will come in, the question is also kind of an internal one that you need to ask yourself: does it make sense? This is especially true when your service number and your outcome number are kind of they're disconnected. So one question you could ask is, what is the likelihood that all served achieve the outcome, or most served that achieve the outcome? kind of on the reverse, what is the likelihood that very few served achieve the outcome? We've seen both cases. So answering these questions internally may help ensure the numbers being reported are accurate. But this is generally not something we're going to call out. It's just unless we see a common pattern, but it is still something that we encourage you to ask yourselves internally. Column 5, on the other hand, is asking about performance target accuracy. In other words, how many you plan to achieve versus how many actually achieved. Again, while this is not a part of the federal review process, because we're not evaluating your accuracy, it is still important for the agency to internally review when it is not within the accepted 80% to 120% range. To reiterate, there's no need to include explanations when submitting your report to OCS about your target accuracy, but it is a good practice to ask why internally and use the information to help you improve future year planning. Next slide, please. Now we're going to take a look at what we call subsets, or you may also hear us refer to them as parent-child indicators. Basically, what we mean by this is there is an indicator that has others under it that the response depends on what is there. They're a group. So the children indicators are subset indicators of the parent. There's two different types of subsets. One where it's auto-calculated and one when it's not auto-calculated. So here we're going to be talking very soon first about the ones that are auto-calculated. The ones that you see on the left-hand side are auto-calculated 2C, 2D, and 5I. Basically, this means that all the children are aggregated together and it should equal its parent. Whereas the ones that are not auto-calculated, they use a different logic. It's the child cannot exceed the parent logic. And these are FNPI 1H and 6A. Remember that this is true for all columns, and we will get to this shortly, but it does apply to all columns 1 through 3. Next slide, please. Okay, so in the previous slide, we talked about the 3 MPIs where the parent is the sum of the children. And as you can see on this slide, 2C is an example where 2C should equal what is reported under 2C 1 through 3. Now, this applies to all 3 columns. 2C column 1 is the sum of 2C 1 through 3's column 1. 2C column 2 is the sum of 2C 1 through 3's column 2, and 2C column 3 is the sum of 2C 1 through 3's column 3. So that's when I was saying that each column it applies to each column. Because of that, it does apply to each column. You may receive up to 3 error flags. It just depends on which column or columns are the issue. A reminder again that smart forms, if opened correctly, will not allow you to enter data into 2C. All 3 columns will populate based off of what was entered in the little 1 through 3. This may or may not be the case for those that are not using the smart form submission option, but just wanted to point that out. Remember that this is a validation error and should be corrected prior to submission. Another thing to consider when you're looking at 2C1 and only that child indicator is it's asking for those who are 0 to 5. And because of this, we can compare it to 2A under the all characteristics report. So the validation logic is that FNPI 2C1 should not exceed 2A under section C, and that's the age demographic of 0 to 5. Now, again, this is a warning, not an error, because there may be times when you're not able to deduplicate your program numbers and be able to include your programs in, like your Head Start program in 2A. And if that's the case, then your outcome number will be larger, most likely, than your demographic number. And that's okay. But we do encourage, one of two options to kind of help explain that. One is to use item E, and we'll get through we'll talk about more about item E later, but it's the number of individuals who may or may not be included in the totals above. And if you list Head Start as an example, as the program name, and the number of individuals that are served through this program in the second column, that would help us know that Head Start is not included in the age demographic, but you are including it in the FMPI. The other best practice idea is to submit a comment explaining why 2C1 exceeds sections 2A. There is no connection for the little 3 and little 2 because they're asking for education levels rather than ages. So just wanted to let you know that it's only applicable to the little one. Next slide, please. 2D is very similar to 2C. The same validations apply. It's the sum of the children. We're also looking at the age connection between 2D1 and the number of children aged 0 through 5, as you've been reported on the all characteristics report. Again, consider using the two suggestions that we provided on the previous slide, that if for some reason your 2D number under the FMPIs is larger than your 0 through 5 age on your demographics report or your all characteristics report, then either use item E or use your comments template to explain why this is the case. Next slide, please. This is the final auto sum indicator, parent-child indicator. 5I is the parent and the others under are the children. And it's just like 2C and 2D. If any of the columns of the parent do not equal the aggregated sum of the children, and in this particular case, there's 2 children, whereas 2C and 2D, there were 3 children, there's going to be an error, and it should be corrected prior than submission. Like 2C and 2D, there is a connection with the all characteristics report with the age. And again, it's that logic of cannot exceed. That 5I little 1 connects to the 2C value, and then the 5I2 connects with the sum of 2D through 2J. And those are the age. When you add those age side together, that will give you the number of anybody who is 25 and older, in this particular one is 18 and older, and then the other two are aggregated together to give you the 14 to 17. And so we can use those to compare to make sure that your MPIs are not exceeding what your demographics are. Again, use item 5 under section C or the comments template to explain any differences when you get that warning, and that will be very helpful. Next slide, please. Let's take a moment for another knowledge check. In the chat, enter if this is true or false, if you think the agency is reporting correctly. Okay, you guys did not fall for my little trick. It is false because each column is looked at individually. Columns 1 and 2 are correct, but columns 3 children total 44, but the agency is reporting 50 in 5I's column 3. So the parent is not the sum equal to the sum of the children, just for column 3. So gold star to everybody. Let's move to the next slide, please. Now we're going to look at the other type of parent-child indicators. This is when the child cannot exceed the parent. One way to really kind of identify these types of indicators is look for the language cues. These indicators that we're going to talk about have the words of the above, and that shows what type of parent-child relationship there is between them, that it's not an auto-calculated, but it uses the cannot exceed logic. So here is kind of the opposite with the SMART forms. You must enter data into both the parent and the children because the parent is not an aggregated sum. And so it's important that for a complete submission, it does require, if you at least report on the parent, then you need to report at least on one of the children, and vice versa. If you report on at least one child, then you also must include the number in the parent. So if using the non-SMART form submission format, it just depends on how the state system was programmed. You may or may not have to enter data into the parent. So another thing to keep in mind, again, with all of the MPIs, it's applicable to all three columns. In this slide, we see 1H and the children under it. So 1H is asking for an unduplicated count of individuals who increase their income and or benefits. It's not asking how they did it, it's just asking if they did it. Whereas the children are asking specifically how it was done. So these cannot be aggregated together because while everyone will be included under 1H, where they will be included in the children will vary. Some people may be under one, some may be under two children, and some people may be under all three children. So keep in mind that 1H is all, everyone served, everyone that is targeted to achieve, and everyone who achieved. These are the numbers that you need to keep in mind when reporting on the children, because no child can be greater than the parent because of the phrase of the implies that the above, the parent, is the max number that any child can be. And oftentimes the child will be less than the parent, and that is perfectly okay. So just a quick example, 10 individuals received services that increase their income or benefits. This is what would be reported under 1H, column 3, because, column 1, because it's the number served. Of these 10 of them were actually working on increasing their income through wage increase. So then we would put 10 under the first child, 1H1. And then 3 were working on increasing income because of increased hours, then you would put 3 under 1H2. It's column 1. And then if 1 was working on increasing their benefits, then you would put 1 under 1H3. And so you see all 3 of those, the children are less than the parent. So the logic is they cannot exceed the parent individually. Next slide, please. This is the same logic that we use for 6A, that the parent must be equal to or greater than the child. So the logic is the child cannot exceed the parent. So in 6A, the agency is going to be reporting the unduplicated count of individuals who increased skills, knowledge, and abilities, and the children are asking specifically how they increased. Again, remember that what is reported under 6A is your max number, and any number reported under the child cannot exceed this max. Next slide, please. Now, another connection that we see with the MPIs is a connection, another issue that we see with the MPIs is a connection with the all characteristics report. And what we're doing is we're comparing what is being reported under item A on the all characteristics report to what is being reported under a specific indicator. So as the FMPIs are unduplicated numbers for both served and achieved, it is expected that these columns will not exceed item A. However, there may be times when the MPI is larger, especially when you cannot deduplicate one or more programs. And again, just remember that suggestion here. Use item E or submit a comment with your report to provide an explanation of why this is. Another validation you may receive is that the number of individuals who achieve the outcome is the same as the number served as reported under section C's item A. And basically, you're saying that 100% for whom you have at least one demographic on actually achieve that outcome. And this is not generally common for most of the MPIs. So using the logic, does this make sense review could help make sure that your numbers are being reported accurately. Now, there are some times when it may equal, but for most of the MPIs, the number reported under will be less than what you're reporting under item A on the all characteristics report. Next slide, please. Now, 7A is a tricky one that unfortunately is not often reported correctly. And what's the most important thing to consider here is an unduplicated count of individuals that achieved at least one outcome. It cannot be less than the indicator that has the highest reported number, but it is generally more. So let me give you a quick example. The agency served 50 individuals in its employment program, and the agency also served 100 people in its weatherization program. So for this example, all we're going to say is this is all the agency did during the reporting period. So it appears that the agency may have served 150 individuals. However, a closer review shows that 10 of the individuals served received both supports. So if reported correctly, the agency would enter 140 under FNPI 7A's column 1 because this is an unduplicated number of individuals served. Now, if the agency only looked at its highest reported FNPI and reported this under 7A, then the agency would be underreporting because they're not looking at those that only receive the employment support. They would be only reporting the customers that receive weatherization. So a key to reporting accurately and robustly on 7A, I'm going to give you a couple of best practices here, is knowing the unduplicated number of individuals assisted through all programs, and 2, being able to have a data system that uses a count if formula, such as give a tally of 1 under column 1 for each customer who is working on an outcome. Now, remember, 7A does not have to be reported on. As with all MPIs, it is optional based on best fit for the agency and how the agency is able to report. But the most important thing takeaway from here is if the agency does use it, then accurate reporting is important. Next slide, please. So now we're going to focus on section B, which is the services. Let's go to the next one, please. Now, so most services require an unduplicated count. And because of this, the number reported under each service is compared to section C's item A, which is that unduplicated number of individuals for whom at least one characteristic was obtained. And a warning flag will be received if the individuals reported under a specific service is larger than what is reported under item A of the all characteristics report. Now, there are a few exceptions as listed on this slide that will allow a service count if the agency cannot obtain an unduplicated count. So in these particular cases, such as food pantry, you may have a service number that is larger than what's reported under section C. It's important to know which ones allow for this because these will not be compared to item A. But if it's not an exception and your service number is higher than item A, it will be flagged. Now, like the MPIs, there are going to be some times because the agency is not able to deduplicate that a service count could be larger than item A under the all characteristics report. Same 2 suggestions, either use item E to include those programs or use the comment template to explain why this is. Next slide, please. Now, as with some of the MPIs, the same thing happens with the services that there's an age connection. And in this particular slide, we see 2A through 2C. So basically we're saying here's 2A plus 2B, 2C, and 2C are added together as they all refer to children who are aged 0 through 5. And when they're added together, then we're going to compare that to 2A on the demographics or the all characteristics report. And we're using the logic that the service count cannot exceed 2A. Now, this is again a warning, not an error, because there are times when this may not be where your service count is larger. Deduplication is one of them. This also may be because a child may have gone from early Head Start to Head Start during the reporting period. That can happen. And if this is the case, then the child would be included both under 2A and 2B. So this is really just more of a guide with the question of, does the data make sense? So that's just kind of important to remember that that's why we're looking at these demographic and age and service and MPI connections, is because does the data collectively make sense together? Next slide, please. So another connection that we're looking for with Section B is the connection to Module 2, Section A, which is the CSBG expenditures. Now, what we're looking for here is if there is a CSBG expenditure reported under Module 2, we are looking to see if there's at least one service under that same domain. Now, this excludes domains that are under Module 2 only, so agency capacity building, linkages, but we are looking at employment and housing and all of those other shared domains. So we're looking to see if there is a CSBG expenditure, is there at least one service reported under the service Module 4, Section B, that same domain. There are some exceptions. For example, you may be working on a community level initiative under that domain, but not providing direct services to clients under it. So you wouldn't have a service under Module 4, Section B. So a best practice is to compare your Module 2, Section A domains to what's being reported under Module 4, Section B, and asking why, if there were expenditures but no services. Now, if correct, you could, but not required, use the comments template and provide an explanation. If not, it will be put on your federal review memo and you'll be asked just to provide an explanation after submission. Now, this validation does go only one way, from CSBG expenditures to service, because an agency may have a service under a domain, but had not used CSBG dollars for it, then we wouldn't see an expenditure under the CSBG side of things. Next slide, please. We also have a connection between some services and Module 2, Section C, which is the resources allocated. Now, the logic of this validation is if there is an allocation, then there should be a service reported. It also goes the opposite direction. If there is a service reported, then there should be an allocation. Now, we're looking specifically at 3 types of funding. Weatherization, and it doesn't matter if it comes from DOE or from LIHEAP. It's just if you receive weatherization funds. We're also looking to see if you receive Head Start funds and early Head Start funds. So during the agency review, if we see the agency has a weatherization funds reported, but not reporting weatherization services, then it will be called out. Same way with Head Start. And like if you're reporting Head Start services, but no Head Start allocation, then we will also call it out, but that will be a Module 2 validation, not a Module 4. And that's what we're talking about today. So you can use this logic, even though we're not going to look at it on the federal level. We're only going to look at weatherization, Head Start, and early Head Start, but you can still use this logic internally to make sure you're reporting accurately and robustly. So for example, if you're reporting receiving emergency solution grant funds, then you probably would expect to see some services under the domain of housing, such as 4C rent payments, 4D deposit payments, 4J utility deposits, and so on, because those are the types of services that Emergency Solutions Grant often helps fund. So internally, you can ask those questions. Does the other allocations beyond weatherization, Head Start, and early Head Start, are we reporting similar services that matches with that allocation? Next one, please. So the next thing we're going to be looking at is a Module 4 connection. So we're looking at Section B connection to the MPIs. And in this particular validation, we're looking to see if there is an outcome under that domain. Is there at least one service also under it too? Now, there are some times when an agency will have a service, and there's always an outcome of that service, but it may not be a service, an outcome that is being reported on the federal report. So we don't look at it from the other direction. If there's a service in that domain, is there an outcome? But because if you think about column 1, it's saying the number of people that are receiving services that are working on that outcome. By that logic alone, you should have some type of service provided to them that is leading to that outcome. So that's what we're looking for. It's a warning because sometimes it doesn't 100% match up. And if that's the case, then just make sure using the comments template would be helpful pre-submission. But if not, then you'll be asked to explain why there is an outcome under a domain, but no service under it. Next slide, please. Now we're going to look at section C and the areas that may give you some challenges. So let's go to the next one. So we're looking at individual characteristics here. So you know section C is broken up in between individuals and household demographics. One important thing to remember is that most individual level characteristics have a total data point. This means that it is a sum of the others that precede it, such as C1E total, which is the gender total, should equal the sum of C1A through C1D, which are the preceding ones. If not, then this is an error. So again, that the total column for a particular data point or characteristic should equal the sum of the types that are being included under it. Another thing, and we don't really see that a lot, so that's good, but just know that it is going to be an error if it is incorrect, if they don't total. Another thing, though, that we're seeing that's a little bit more common is that individual characteristics for gender, age, disability status, and health insurance, race, and ethnicity. So just those, because you see there are some exceptions on the individual side that this is not applicable to. But for those that I just called out, gender, age, disability status, health insurance, race, and ethnicity, what we're going to be doing is comparing the total reported under that individual characteristic and comparing it to item A, which is the unduplicated number for whom at least one demographic is obtained. Now, the error is that item A and the total should equal each other. So when they do not match, such as if you're reporting 50 under C1E and 75 under item A, then it will be called out because they do not equal each other, and that's the requirement. And we'll go on a little bit more later about using the unknown not reported column to kind of, or data point to help you with that. But it's important to note that we are going to be looking at that connection between item A and the total for those demographics. Now, again, there are 5 individual level characteristics listed on the slide that you see on the right side that are not compared against item A, but they are compared against other data points on your all characteristics report, and we will go through this in just a moment. Next slide, please. Like the individual side, there are household demographics that we are comparing to item B, which is the number of unduplicated households for whom at least one or more demographic was obtained. Now, there are 2 exceptions. That's other income source and non-cash benefits, as you see on this slide. But all of the other ones under the household have a total that is the sum of the preceding fields. So make sure that when you're looking, so, okay, I'm sorry. I'm kind of confusing 2 things together. So at first I started talking about B and the total of each individual level characteristic must equal each other, except for D14 and D15. And if it doesn't match, say you're reporting 50 households, but only reporting 25 under income source, then it would be flagged as an error because it should be the same number. The total column should equal what is being reported under B. So now where I we're bringing things together is like the individual characteristics, there are total columns for all of the demographics, household demographics, with the exception of other income source and non-cash benefits. So remember that any of the preceding fields should add together and equal what is being reported in the sum field. So if you're reporting a number for D9J, it is the, because that's the total column. You also need to make sure that D9A through D9I add up together to equal what is in D9J. Okay, next slide, please. So now we're going to talk about using the unknown not reported. So remember, most individual and household characteristics totals must equal either item A or B, but not all programs obtain and services obtain demographics, and or, not all individuals will report on everything. So this is where the unknown not reported option comes in under most of the individual and household characteristics. So unknown not reported is basically what remains after subtracting the unduplicated number of individuals reported either under either item A or item B, and then subtracting the number reported for the respective total. And so what is left over would be your unknown. So let me give you a quick example. So the agency is reporting 75 for item A, but for gender, the total only comes up to 50 in terms of the known demographic categories: male, female, other. It only comes up to 50. If you take the 50, and subtract it from 75, then you are able to figure out that the unknown not reported number for gender would be 25. Not all systems are programmed to give you an unknown not reported count, but it's very simple to obtain, and it's very important to take that extra effort before submitting your report to make sure that the individual totals match their respective item A or item B, because it will be flagged. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're going to go to another knowledge check. And in the chat, indicate if the agency is reporting correctly. Okay, so this is a trick question. The answer is actually unknown. This is because the example that I have, the demographic, the military, is actually one of the exceptions to comparing it to item A. It's because there is an age requirement or connection. Now, because we do not know what the agencies reported under ages 18 through 75 plus, we do not know if 60 is the right number. It may be correct if the agency only served individuals 18 and older, but most likely it would not be correct since most agencies serve both children and adults. So we would expect not 60 for this if item A is 60. So yes, I know I'm not fair. I'm sorry. But right now we're going to get a little bit more into this. And so we're going to look at the next slide. Oh, we're here, sorry. So we're going to look more in depth at the characteristics that use C2 age for its comparison. So education levels is one of them, and there are two different age ranges it uses. 14 through 24, and 25 plus. So this means 2C and 2D are added together and compared against 3I ages 14 through 24, whereas 2E through 2J are added together and compared to 3I ages 25 plus. So people that, like I said, are in that particular age range are going to be compared to the same education level that matches with that age range. Remember, you do need to use unknown not reported to help you to make sure that your numbers align. So, but again, remember, you're not using item A for this particular one. You're using the sum of the age range minus the total number of individuals for whom education level is obtained. And this should be equal to your unknown not reported. Okay, so let's go to the next one. This is another example. This is disconnected youth. Now, disconnected youth uses the ages 14 to 24 age range. So again, 2C and 2D are going to be the sum that you need to come up with. But I want to really have you guys note there's a logic difference with this one because you're only reporting the youth who are neither in school nor are working, whereas all of the other demographics, it's a full range. So let's use health insurance. You're reporting those that have health insurance, those that do not have health insurance, and those that you do not know have health insurance. Whereas this one and this data point only through the entire demographics, you're only kind of focusing on the ones that met the requirement of being neither in school or are not working. So there is no total column here. So here's the logic. 4A cannot exceed the sum of 2C and 2D, but most likely it's going to be significantly less. That is okay and expected. So let's look at military status, which is the next slide. This is one that even though this is kind of an exception in terms of having an age defined within the category name, this one implies that it's for individuals 18 and older. So 7E should equal the sum of 2D through 2J. Again, using that simple calculation of total individuals aged 18 and older, subtract it from the demographic that you know, for whom you know, yes, no, active, not, veteran, the options that are there. You subtract all of those and you should come up with the unknown not reported number. And then if you get that number, then everything should add together to equal the age range of 18 plus. Next slide, please. Very similar to the military, this one is looking at individuals aged 18 and older. And so we're using the AI comparing to the sum of 2D through 2J. Again, continue using the unknown not reported to help you make sure that your numbers align. Next slide, please. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about a few exceptions that use a different logic. 5C is using the cannot exceed validation. So basically what we're saying is each individual source under 5C cannot exceed what was reported under 5B yes. So 5B yes is the individuals that you say you know have health insurance. That is the unduplicated count of individuals saying, yes, I have health insurance. C5C is asking you for what types of health insurance they have. So even though there is a total for 5C5, don't let it confuse you because that is not going to be an unduplicated count because individuals may receive more than one type of insurance, such as somebody who receives both Medicaid and Medicare. So the logic here is as long as 5C9 at least equals 5B yes, then there's no issue. But most likely 5C9, which is the total, will exceed 5B, and that is okay and expected. I have seen people try to explain that because they think that the total for 5C9, because it's more than what the yes is, that it's an error, and it's not. The smart forms are programmed to not flag that, but I'm not sure about other systems, but the totals don't matter except for that the total must equal at least the 5B yes. And another thing I wanted to tell you guys to be careful about are the two unknowns. There's one under 5B and 5C. 5B unknown means you do not know if that person has health insurance or not, whereas 5CA 8 means you know that that person has insurance, but you just don't know where it's coming from. So two different unknowns. They mean two different things. Now, next slide, please. Now, we're looking at two of the exceptions under the household size. And let me tell you, there's a good clue that you can kind of use here, and that's word clues to help you kind of determine the relationship between the data points. So with D13 and D14, what you're going to see, the word clue is other income source. And that is your key right there. So whereas C13 is asking for an unduplicated count of households, 14 is asking for you to look at those households that have at least identified that they've received at least one source under other income source category. So this includes anything that has other income source on the 13 side. So that would be 13B, 13C, 13E, and 13F. That's telling you you need to aggregate those four data points together. And now that becomes your number that you're going to use when looking at C14. And the logic is that each individual type listed under 14 cannot exceed the sum of those four data points under 13 that say other income source. Now, one thing important to note that if you're only tracking that the family has received another income source, but you're not tracking specifically what it is, this would be the only time 14.0 would be reported. And here's the key, and it would equal the sum of 13B, 13C, 13E, and 13F. But this is very rare because some programs will obtain the information and others will not. But again, the logic is that each individual item under 14 cannot exceed the sum of 13B, 13C, 13E, and 13F. Next slide, please. Okay, so another thing, again, that word clue that we're going to be looking for under, under 13 is non-cash benefits. So C13, again, is asking for the unduplicated count. 15 is asking of those that you know have non-cash benefits, what specific types they've received. So the same logic applies that you're looking at 13C, 13D, 13F, and 13H. Those aggregated together become your number that you cannot exceed. And then each individual type under 15 cannot exceed that number. Will often be less than, but cannot exceed. Again, you can use the unknown under this, but that would be in rare cases where the unknown equals the sum of 13C, 13D, 13F, and 13H. And that's only if you ask somebody if they've received non-cash benefits, but you don't ask them specifically what they receive. Next slide, please. And finally, we're going to talk about using the items E and F. We kind of talked a little bit about this earlier. This is where you're going to be reporting the number of individuals in those programs that you're not able to deduplicate. And so you will just put the program name and then the number of individuals that are served. Now, this can help us and you validate the related MPIs and services if for some reason those numbers are larger than what you're reporting under item A. So that's very important. So this is one of the options that you can use to kind of help explain why the service number or the outcome number is larger, or you can use the comment memo as well. So this is just one option. It's just important to make sure that you include both pieces of information, the name and the number served, in order for it to be considered complete. Okay, that ends my portion. I'm going to turn it over to Monique.
Thank you, Tiffany. We are running a little bit over, but we do hope that you guys can stick with us. I do have a few important items to remind you of as you are reporting in Module 4. We can go to the next slide. Information reported should be an unduplicated count of people. NPIs ensure that column 1, number of individuals served, includes all people who are working towards the indicator, even if they did not meet the outcome. The services in NPI should tell a story together, not in exclusion of each other. The data between the two should correlate to some extent. Example, if children ages 0 to 5 are being reported in the education NPIs, there should be some services reported for school children in the services section. FNPI 7A is the unduplicated count of people who obtained one or more outcomes from any of the domains. If someone only obtained a job, they would be reported in the employment domain and then in FNPI 7A. If someone obtained a job and obtained safe housing, then they would be reported in the employment and housing domain as well as ones in FNPI 7A. FNPI 7A should be at least as high as the highest NPI reported for an agency. We can go to the next slide. I also want to remind you of the linkages between Module 2 and Module 4 to show you how Module 2 and Module 4 are related to each other. In Module 2, you should report allocation of available resources, both CSBG and non-CSBG. Then those resources are mobilized and utilized to deliver services that are reported in Module 4, Section B, Individual and Family Services. After participants receive services, they reach specific outcomes as they become self-sufficient, which is recorded in Module 4, Section A, Individual and Family National Performance Indicators. Lastly, demographic characteristics of those participants is captured in Module 4, Section C, All Characteristic Support. To simplify, when you report resources, we expect to see delivery of services using those resources, and then outcomes and demographics of participants who use their services. I hope this slide will help you to connect parts of the annual report and guide your successful fiscal year 24 submission. Now we'll go over upcoming webinars and share contact information. In the action transmittal, we detailed 3 categories of resources: tools, training, and technical assistance. The tools are the tangibles and the things you need to get it done. Training are the dynamic conversations we review with clear objectives. Technical assistance is the homework, how you may be applying the knowledge of PEAK and how we can help you better use that information. Our goal is to see you all win and succeed. I'll go through each one of them. So tools, please note the important links referenced here. From the Office of Community Services grant homepage, you can access our CSBG Annual Report Toolkit, CSBG Events Calendar, and the CSBG webinars by scrolling to the bottom of the page and dropping down grant recipient resources. You will then be able to access the applicable links and resources as noted in the bottom photo. If you need any additional support, please reach out as soon and as often as needed. The CSBG Annual Report Toolkit is available now and updated regularly. This has the fillable tools for Module 1 as well as other materials. The vendor portal, hosted on the NASCAS website as part of the OCS-funded cooperative agreement, the vendor portal is specific to those grant recipients that use a third-party system to submit their data. The webinar on December 3rd will review this tool. Lastly, OLDC, or the Online Data Collection System, is where all grant recipients, states, tribes, and territories must submit their complete annual report. And then we have trainings. Upcoming trainings can be found via our CSBG events calendar page. There are several upcoming webinars that will be shared on the next slide. As discussed, we've held 5 webinars already, which cover understanding the CSBG annual report for performance. The recordings and the slides are available for the kickoff, Module 1, the Tribal Annual Report and Tribal Annual Report short form, as well as the webinar for Module 2, or explaining eligible entities, expenditures, capacities, and resources. The slides are available for Module 3, and we are working on uploading the webinar as well, the recording of the webinar as well. And then we have leveraging systems and tools for annual report submissions, which will start on December 3rd, where we'll discuss using state systems for reporting, including demonstrating the vendor tool. December 5th, understanding and troubleshooting smart forms. And then December 9th, how to access OLDC. To ensure that your TA needs are properly addressed, please send assistance requests to your program specialist. For financial operations and monitoring requests, copy your financial analyst. For data collection and performance reporting, including OLDC requests, copy your data and evaluation specialist. Please visit the DCA staff contact info page, which will be added to the chat for your appropriate contacts. We also want to provide you with Tiffany's contact information on this slide, as well as in the chat. Thank you, everyone.